Hello. Today I'm going to show you the most powerful AI workflow that I have found to date. Today is August 24th, 2025 for reference. My name's Jonathan. I currently run a web company. We sell items on Shopify, as you might be able to see my Shopify counter and awards in the background. But I've been developing software applications for around 5 years. I'm a computer science major, and I currently work with a small team of 5 developers. So, to dive into this workflow, I'm going to show you the setup, and then afterwards we're going to go through an FAQ, how to make it more powerful, some tips and tricks, some other things to look into. So it's going to be a little bit inverted. So let's hop right into it. Okay, here's the high level overview. So you're going to have your GitHub repository, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using Git Worktrees. In case you're unfamiliar, this is a built-in feature of Git. So if you do git push, git pull, you have this feature already available to you. We're going to show you how to set up Git Worktrees. And what this is going to do is it's going to create 3 different folders or copies of your repository. And why this is important is each copy can have its own modules. So you can install or remove packages without messing up the other ones, for example. Additionally, uh, Cursor can open up these different repositories and work on the code without affecting the other ones. This allows us to scale this way more. And we'll be giving each one a separate config so it can maybe operate on different ports, for example. And then, of course, they'll be on their own branches. So we'll set up the work trees, the configs, and then you're going to open up all these with your cursor or whatever AI IDE you choose to use. And then I'm going to teach you how to set up this planning stage, which is like an AI agent with basically just custom instructions on how to create a detailed plan. And you're going to tell it your preferences along with some helpful things. And then there's the execution stage where it's going to be tasked with following these instructions. There's some important guardrails and instructions that will all be given in this video. And then the last stage of this is human review. As the AI is operating, the human's going to be approving dangerous commands. You're going to be keeping an eye on what it's doing. You might have to encourage it to keep going sometimes, and you're going to be reviewing the output and the final product eventually. I'm not promising that you will fully replace a developer, but I am saying you can speed up your developer's progress, especially when it's human in the loop. So without further ado, let's hop into how to get started. So the audio cut out for this recording, but basically I just wanted to show this command. I'll put it in the description, but I also wanted to demonstrate that you don't need to remember this. You can just ask ChatGPT like I did. So you're going to copy this command, and I'll break down how it works so you can modify it for your use case. But just make sure you pull the latest version of your repository and do a git fetch. So first navigate to your repository. In my case, my repository is bloxboom2, and you're going to paste this command. So the git work tree add is the part that you're going to keep, and then the dot dot slash is going to go up your folder structure, and then you can name whatever the new repository should be. So in my case, I want it to be bloxboom-4. Then you're going to do -b and specify what you want the branch to be called. In my case, I did feat/test for video, and then you're going to specify what branch it should take the code from, and we wanted this to be based off of the dev branches code. You're going to enter this command, and then you can cd into that folder and install, set up the config, and open up Cursor. The step that we've done is we created work trees. You can replicate that step multiple times and you can get multiple work trees, and then you can open up multiple cursor instances. So technically this is scalable based on A, how many cursor tokens you have, and B, how many resources your computer can support, as you can add a lot of work trees. I currently run 3 and I feel like that's a sweet spot for me, but you could theoretically do more. Now let's hop into what this planning stage is and how to create it. So transparently, I did not invent this. In fact, these are the two blogs that I highly was inspired by. In fact, they pretty much just copied them because they were just very good. And to summarize and save your time, you can just scroll to the bottom of this like blog. I'll put the link in the description, and there's a GitHub repository. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this planner MD file, copy this, and I highly recommend taking a look at this. However, despite what you're working on, this is a pretty universal config and it's pretty good, so I didn't feel any need to edit this. However, there is lots of benefits to tweaking these towards your repository and your technologies and potentially looking for improvements. But as for now, we'll just continue with this. However, it's something important that you should take a look at, especially if you end up liking this workflow. So now I opened up my cursor instance, and there's a couple of things you're going to need to do. You're going to need to go to Preferences and Cursor Settings, go to Chat, and one, I highly recommend turning on completion sound, very helpful. And then what is required is you must turn on this custom modes beta, very important. And then lastly, the next step, you're going to want to go to your models. Ensure you have Claude 4 Sonnet with thinking. Make sure it has this thinking icon. This seems to improve the performance. Theoretically, you don't need it, but I highly recommend if you want good results with this. The next thing you're going to do is Gemini 2.5 Pro with thinking. Turn that on. Make sure you have these on. Again, I highly recommend experimenting with other ones as the best models are always changing, but these are known to perform well because there's multiple factors, including the current coding benchmarks, and also not all models are as effective in Cursor as the benchmarks show. Regardless, once you have all these things turned on, now you can go to the language tab, and I'll make this bigger, and you can see these modes. So I already have a couple, but what you're going to want to do, okay, I had a weird little technical glitch with Cursor. Hopefully you guys don't run into this, but when you open up this menu, you should be able to click Add Custom Mode. However, I think I have the limit of however many custom modes, and there's an invisible button here. Look, I'll show you. If I click here, nothing happens, but if I click on this like spot, there's an edit mode. So anyways, I'm just gonna do this edit mode. So first thing, you're gonna want to call it like planning or planner. The name doesn't matter that much. Give it a cool icon maybe. Then for the model, go to Gemini 2.5 Pro. The reason for this is Gemini 2.5 Pro has a very large context window, so this helps it make a really good comprehensive plan, and that's the reasoning on why we chose this model for this task. Next, you're going to turn off edit mode, and you're going to turn off MCP servers. However, there's a bug currently where that is not working for me. Regardless, you can experiment with MCP servers. Some people really like them. However, at least in my experience, it's not really necessary for this step. And then you're going to turn off auto apply edits, and we're going to paste in the custom instructions here that we copied from GitHub. And you just click done. So I'm not going to do this because I already have it, but you're going to go to your mode, planner. It says auto. I don't know if it uses Gemini or not, but regardless, I sometimes just manually select it to be sure. And you're going to type in your task here, which I'll give you an example in a second. Okay, so we'll do this little example. So I just wrote a little prompt. There's not too much detail in here. In fact, I kind of wanted to show that even without a perfect prompt, this works well. Again, this is not a guide on prompt engineering. There's plenty of resources out there, and many more people are more educated on that topic than I am. But here, it thought for 4 seconds, and it's asking some clarifying questions. So we're going to just do our best to answer these live. So again, this doesn't matter too much. I'm just merely demoing the application. And I'll fast forward this part because I just want to show you the end result. Okay, I'm at the last step. So to recap, basically I just got asked a bunch of questions, and since this was a test feature, I didn't even have much of a plan to begin with. But after going back and forth, which honestly, this is the longest I've seen it talk to me, probably because I was super vague. But anyways, after talking to it and clarifying all the details, it will output something like this. And you copy the output, create a file. The root directory works, or personally, I just do it in this cursor file. Doesn't really matter that much because you end up deleting this plan after the feature is implemented. And yeah, so the plan looks like something like this. You should review what it's saying. So we'll just take a quick glance. It's using technologies from my repo. Keep in mind I never told it this. Okay, awesome. And then sometimes you might want to say like completion criteria. Um, a common one is it doesn't lint after, or you could have it run type checks or run test cases. Give it the commands, give it as much context as possible. Again, this is the same as every coding tutorial. Give it context, give it information. But for now, we'll just leave the plan as is. And what you're going to do is you're going to do a new chat. And then, same as how we created the planning mode, we're going to create this executor mode. So let's see if I can find this invisible edit button again. There we go. After enough tries, I got it. For the model, click Claude 4 Sonnet with thinking. Name it what you want. Add a keybind if you want. Make sure it has access to all the tools. You may or may not want MCP once again. And then as for the instructions, we're going to go back to this GitHub repo by Carl Ranneberg. You're going to go to the executor.md file and you're going to copy this. Before you paste it in there, this one probably needs editing. For example, he uses yarn. I don't use yarn, I use pnpm. So I needed to edit that and remove that. And then the next thing is one thing he really liked to do is he wanted it to do task by task. So it would do 1.1, 1.2, and it would stop between each small task. And this takes a ton of tokens. I don't recommend this, and most of the time it felt like a waste of my time, honestly. Like it would install a file and then, or install a package and then stop, and then make one edit and then stop. So to me, this was less helpful than just letting it run by itself. I get it's riskier, but in my experience, this workflow has been so good that it's worth it to me. You can always revert using Git and fix things later. It's not a big deal. So yeah, you're going to edit this. Make sure you edit the things you want. If you don't have test cases, remove stuff like that. It doesn't need much tweaking, but it does need some, in my opinion. Once that is done, go back to your cursor, paste in the instructions, and click Done. So for my executor mode, we'll turn that on. And what I do is I just drag this plan.md file in there. And I say, please implement this plan. Continue without stopping unless you need human intervention. So my executor mode, I accidentally left in the instructions about like do not like stop after every task. So I have to keep telling it to keep going, which is pretty bad. I need to edit that. But ideally, you shouldn't need to put many instructions here, as this plan should have a lot of them. And you're going to click send. So I'm not going to sit here and implement this long feature that I made up that I'm going to throw away the code and spend a couple dollars on in tokens. But I do want to just show you how it works. So it's going to run, it's going to work around your repo with the tool calls. And for the most part, it should be pretty autonomous. In fact, for the most part, it can run for 5-10 minutes without me doing anything if it's working well. So if it's running into errors and issues, I notice that it kind of gets in a loop and you need to intervene. But I will have 3 of these cursors running at a time, and for the most part, you can have them running concurrently, but sometimes you get like a backlog where they're all kind of stopped because you need just more human review than you can do at a time. So another thing is it's going to be running commands, and the first time you do this, it's probably going to say like, oh, approve, decline, skip, like stuff like that. Here's a great example. So we can click run, skip, reject and tell it to do differently, or allow list. If the command is safe, like let's say cd or ls or pwd, um, like these commands, like I don't see a way how the AI agent could get itself into trouble really, and I have no problem putting this on my allow list. However, in installations and like maybe like a curl command, I might perceive as like dangerous. So maybe I don't want to allow list those. So I manually run some commands. And this is where the human intervention is needed, you know. These these commands, it's important that they're run by a human, as you don't want it deleting your production database, for example. Um, like things like RM, like you should for sure not let your AI agent just remove a bunch of files without a human approving that. But yeah, regardless, like start with no commands and then slowly add ones that you deem safe. So yeah, in the meantime, while this is running, I'll talk about some ways to improve this. So you can make a .cursor file at the root of your repo and put a rules folder in here. And then inside of that folder, you can put a project MDC file. In fact, I didn't do this manually. In cursor settings, you can do this somehow, but regardless, I'm going to continue. And for this, I have a always apply. And my always apply rules are like general, like this is how the front end is made, the technologies we use. Um, and then we have the back end because this is a mono repo. And some of my recommendations are tell it your core technologies. You might not need to tell it every technology that you use. You might want to tell it where you host. You might want to tell it how your backend and front end like interact, for example. ENVs, it seems to have issue with those, so make sure you specify how that works because, you know, a lot of these files aren't Git tracked, so sometimes it's a little blind. Um, I don't recommend this linting section. In fact, this is kind of old code. We have this fixed on another branch, we just haven't merged yet. And yeah, you want to give it instructions on how to run linting, how to run test cases, any preferences you have for running commands. Like, for example, I tell it to always use pnpm or always lint, always type check before deeming the task done. So this file alone can help you so much with wasting less tokens, getting better output in terms of quality and faster output. And yeah, I would highly recommend putting a lot of time into making this file good. You don't want it to be too lengthy, but you don't want it to omit important information and see every agent run into the same issues. Additionally, I haven't experimented with this, but you can apply intelligent rules to where the agent decides if it's helpful or not, or you can match it to when certain files are edited, for example. I've not experimented with this, but it's a possibility that it could improve the code quality quite a bit. Anyways, it looks like our agent may have gotten stuck, and I want to show you how to deal with this, as this is pretty common, honestly. So there's two ways. Open in terminal, and then you just click enter. I don't know why, but for some reason it gets stuck, typically with commands that run too fast, in my opinion, or commands that take like run forever, for example, maybe like a curl request that times out after 30 seconds, or like a run dev server and it just never ends, you know? It doesn't make sense when it happens because it's not consistent, but it sometimes does. Anyways, this method didn't work in this case, so I highly just recommend clicking skip. And if that does not work, we'll give it a couple more seconds. The other way is you just click stop and you tell it to continue basically. Again, this flow doesn't always work perfectly, but it's the best we got. It still works insanely effective. It implements things that would have taken me a couple days, and that's with knowing how to do it or doing it before. And the AI agent can just simply do it faster than I can. Anyways, it looks like it broke out of that infinite cycle loop. I don't know how, I don't understand why, but it did. And yeah, we can continue approving commands. The other thing is how to improve. The other thing that you can do to potentially use less requests and save money is encouraging less prompts to get to your final product. So from my understanding, the Cloudflare Sonnet model charges you based on request, not token, unless you're on the usage-based billing, which is different. So if you're on the Cursor $20 a month, or the Teams plan, which is $40 a month, or the Ultra plan, which is $200 a month, you get charged per prompt or request, I believe. So if your agent keeps stopping prematurely, encouraging it to continue running or having instructions to keep running until you need human intervention, this can help save you on your cost, which is highly why I recommended in the Carl Ranneberg prompts to remove the line saying to stop right away. So yeah, as for improving the code quality that it produces, I highly, 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 highly recommend a couple things, especially if you're using TypeScript and you're working on web apps. Number one, you want a very strict TS config. Very, very strict. As strict as you can get it to be. This improves code quality if less things are null, less things are, um, you know, the bodies are buried somewhere. You want it to be strict, you want things to be done a certain way, and you want your repo to leverage a compiler. So make your TS config very strict and make sure it knows what the type checking command is. Second, you're going to want a linter and potentially something to style. So previously, people used ESLint and Prettier. These are quite good, but quite annoying and slow in my opinion. So we use Biome at my company. It's both a linter and a styler, so it's way easier to set up, and it's built in Rust, so it's really fast. I also know there's an alternative for linting called Oxlint. I've not looked into it much, but just putting that on your roadmap. Again, highly, highly, highly recommend making this as strict as possible. Make it done in the most strict way so the code must confine to the highest standards, essentially. And don't just make it unnecessarily strict. All of these rules should be intentional. And the next thing is you want a good CI/CD pipeline. Having a good CI/CD pipeline can make sure your builds actually work before merging to main, for example. And you might have some additional precautions, such as using CodeRabbit for AI code reviews, or you might have semgrep or some of the other coding tools to look for code issues, code smells, or security vulnerabilities. I'm not saying it'll catch everything, but it'll greatly reduce any issues and improve the code quality overall. And then the last thing that I can think of is leveraging specific tooling that the AI can work well with. And I'll give you some examples. So one, if you have a database, let's say, that you just connect to and you have no ORM, basically the model has no idea what your table structure looks like. So you either need to feed that in as context or you need a technology such as an ORM to inform the code on how it can access the database. So some examples of migrating to a technology like this is one, you can adopt an ORM, or another opportunity is you can use something like cutting edge like Convex, which is literally built to be a type safe database backend layer. So yeah, your technology choice is quite important in improving the code quality, feeding it the right context, make sure your files um, have lots of important info. And yeah, I'm sure there's other ways to improve, but these seemed like the major ones that I've found. And we're welcome to open up a discussion into how to do this in the comments. and potentially there will be some follow-up videos into this workflow. Anyways, I'm not going to actually implement this feature because it's just a test, but I do want you guys to experiment with this. I highly recommend it. It's saved me so many hours. In fact, this is the most powerful AI workflow that I found. Um, Codex and Claude Code and all these are fantastic, but to me, they worked best with small features or, maybe they weren't as powerful. This seems like the most powerful workflow that I've found. So I might use Codex for a small feature or something, but I really love this workflow when I'm adding like a big feature or trying to integrate a new technology or something that's much more complex and I need to be in the loop for. Yeah, if you like these videos, please let me know in the comments. If you have any questions, I am potentially open to making other videos on topics that I covered or related topics. So yeah, please drop a follow and take care.